Okay, so this is the introduction and study plans portion of my new book, Overcoming ACT Math. So the introduction is just like basically it gives you a little bit of a background if you're interested in that. And it lets you know that of these videos will be posted up to my YouTube channel by August 30th, 2023. Now, the way that you use this book, and this is really important, so don't skip this, is these books are meant to be used in addition to the videos that I post on my YouTube channel. So what I mean by that is you watch the video for the chapter, the corresponding chapter that you're on. I give you a brief summary or just some quick reminders of what you need to remember before going in and doing your practice problems for that specific chapter. And then after that, you go and attempt the problems on your own first. And then after you're done attempting the problems, you come back to the video to watch the explanation for anything that you were stuck on or not sure about. Instead of seeing some vague answer key and staring at it and being super confused, I think it's a lot easier for students to just see it outright in a video format. So that's how you use this exam. So, or this book for this exam. So basically, you look at the video, get your quick reminders, do it by yourself, and then come back and watch the video for anything you got wrong, and I'll explain it to you. And the long version here is just basically I don't have an one size fits all approach when it comes to teaching. That's kind of why I created this book also, because I feel like there's no book out there that lets you individualize your test prep journey. And I wanted to create that because as you'll see in the study plans, you may have different timelines, you may have different needs just based off of you as a student, what you need to focus on, what kind of skills you need to improve. That's what the diagnostic test is for. So I think it's very important to individualize your test prep journey. So that's sort of why I created this book. Also because I found that the other books were lacking various other things that I needed for my students. So I decided, hey, I'll just create my own. So yeah, that is pretty much it for that section. And then about the test. So the ACT math section is 60 minutes and it's 60 questions. Now, the timing strategy that I recommend is 1 minute per question. If you have extended time, then a minute and a half per question. Make sure to check the official ACT website for their different policies. Like, for instance, there's some forms of photo ID that are acceptable to bring and some that are not. So you don't want to show up to the test, have studied for everything, and then you have the wrong type of ID and they don't let you in. So things like that, the calculator policy, make sure you have an approved calculator. Make sure that you check out the test day checklist and registration deadlines. Again, you can literally just Google this, put in act.org into Google, and then put like calculator policy, and it'll be like one of the first links that pops up. And photo ID requirements, same thing, test day checklist. Never, ever, ever leave anything blank on these exams. This is a big one that students come to me and they think that if for some reason, I don't know where this misconception came from, they think that if they leave it blank, that they're going to somehow do better on the exam than if they potentially mark the answer and get it wrong. I don't know where that came from, but that's not true. Never leave anything blank because it can only help you if you guess. If you leave it blank, you're definitely getting that wrong and not getting those points. But if you guess, you at least have a shot at getting those points. So definitely guess. And I always say guess before you move on to the next question. So let's say like you're on question number 3 and you have no idea what you're doing on this question. You just have to guess and move on because it's been a minute. So you need to move on to number 4. Before you move on to number 4, you might, well, not might, you should bubble in answer choice A in your bubble sheet. Again, it's not a bubble sheet. I'm just saying I'm going to bubble in answer choice A before moving on to number 4, because what'll happen is, and what happens a lot with students, especially if you have something like ADHD, is if they skip number 3, and let's say you found out that number 1 was B, number 2 is C, and now you're going to skip number 3, you're going to go to number 4. And for number 4, you decide, oh, the answer there is B. They'll see that there's a blank for next to number 3 and they'll put B there when really it should have been number 4 that they were putting B on, and they throw their entire answer key off after that. So do not do that. Make sure that you fill in a bubble before moving on, even if you are guessing, because remember, you can always come back to it. Just circle that number in your test booklet, not on the answer bubble sheet, but in your test booklet. Just circle it so you know later if you have extra time, you can come back and change it if you need to. So that's what I recommend there. The ACT, unlike the SAT, only has one math section. You are allowed a calculator for the entire math section, but you do not get a formula sheet like you do on the SAT. So make sure that you really memorize a lot of those formulas. There's a lot of memorization. That's one of the main things between the ACT and SAT. You need to memorize stuff for both exams, but the ACT has a lot more stuff and concepts that you have to memorize. So that is one of the caveats of this exam. So just be aware of that. Always, I would recommend maybe like 5 to 10 minutes because it's so easy. 5 to 10 minutes every other day or something. Just looking at the formulas. Maybe make some flashcards. Test yourself every other day for 5 to 10 minutes with those flashcards of the formulas, things like that. Because little practice spaced out over time is a lot better than cramming. So then for a timing strategy, I already talked about that. So the one thing that I do tell students is sometimes it can hurt your pacing if you're doing 1 minute per question, like literally 1 minute per question, like looking at your watch 1 minute, okay, move on to the next question. What can help with that? Because that's going to take time looking at your watch, seeing how much time you have left, that takes up time. What can help with that is calculating the minutes you have per page. So let's say that on the first page you have three questions on the first page, then you have 3 minutes to complete the first page because that's going to be easier to keep track of, and you're not going to have to keep looking at you still should keep looking at your watch, obviously, periodically, but you're not going to have to be looking at it as closely and like monitoring it and like switching back and forth as much as you would if you did literally 1 minute per question. So think of it as like 1 minute per question is a way to calculate how many minutes you have per page. So if like there's 5 questions on the page, you have 5 minutes for that page, etc. So let's now go to, also the ACT exam, the last 10 questions, so questions 50 through 60 are a lot harder than the other ones typically. Now, this is not something I recommend for all students, but for some students, especially if you really struggle with math and you're not going for like those 30s or like the high 20s, like you're just kind of like wanting maybe mid 20s, something like that, is like your dream score, then this might be something that's helpful for you. Again, it depends on the individual student. I don't recommend it for all students, but typically those students don't get the last 10 questions right anyway. So what I recommend for those students is allocating that extra 10 minutes, because those last 10 questions, a minute per question, that's 10 minutes. Allocate those 10 minutes instead of like staring at those 10 questions and getting them wrong probably. Guess on those, unless you know how to do it, then do it. But typically they don't know how to do those last 10 questions. So guess on those and then use those 10 minutes on the easier first 50 problems and try to go back to like anything that you circled because you guessed or like you think you could get it right if you just have a little bit more time. Because remember, you don't get more points for like answering a harder question. An easy question and a hard question are going to be worth the same amount. You're not being like, it's not weighted based off of the difficulty of the question. So people tend to forget that, and they pay for it with their score. Now, let's talk about where to start. So we're going to go to the study plans and discuss those in a second. That's on page 9. So we're going to go there and then discuss picking a study plan that fits your specific needs. Now, a disclaimer, I know that some of the equations and exponents and stuff look a little bigger than others. I did that intentionally so that the exponents and fractions were easier to read. And then this is my social media information. So I have like my YouTube channel, my TikTok, all of that. If you have this book, you're probably already following me on TikTok, but I do have a YouTube channel as well where all of this gets posted to a playlist called Overcoming ACT Math. So you just go to that playlist, find the applicable video for the chapter you're on, and start working on it. And I have other stuff on my Teachers Pay Teachers storefront if you want to check that out. I post free resources and paid ones as well. Now let's move on to page 9, the study plans. So there's 3 different options for study plans. So you might be cramming right now. So cramming, I would say, is like you have a week to your exam is most of the time what like people consider cramming, or maybe you have like 2 weeks, something like that. That's going to be the cramming one. And then the next option that we'll talk about after is if you have about a month, and then the other one would be 2 or more months. So let's first talk about cramming. So what you're going to do is pick your scenario. So if it's cramming, then you are going to also make sure that you, I just want to mention this important note. Sorry, I forgot to do that before I got into the cramming thing. Make sure you are always checking your answers periodically and making corrections when necessary. All of this work means nothing. Doing all these practice questions means nothing if you're not doing the corrections. Now, when I say do corrections, here's what I mean, because I know high schoolers and I know what you guys think corrections is, and it's not this. What I'm about to describe is not corrections. Do not just go do the problems and then watch the video and think that's doing corrections. That's not doing corrections. That's watching a video of explanations. Doing corrections means that you do the problems, right? You do it on your own the first time, you check it with the answer key, and then let's say you got number 2 wrong. You go and attempt to redo that, knowing now that, let's say D was the one you picked and that's not the answer because you got it wrong. Do it again, knowing that you have to pick from the remaining choices and see if you can get it right that time on your own. And if you don't, then that's when you watch the explanation video. So that's what doing corrections is. When I say doing corrections, that's what I mean. And remember, you got to keep doing that for everything, because it doesn't make any sense to not do the corrections, because then you're not learning. You already knew the stuff that you got correct. You have to do the corrections to learn the other stuff. So if you're cramming and it's about 1 week before your exam, what I recommend is taking a timed practice test. You can find free copies of practice exams on the official ACT website. They release one each year. So you just go to act.org, put in Google like act.org free practice test, and it'll take you there. And then complete the corrections for the practice test that you took. Just like I was saying, always do the corrections. Now, make sure you're timing yourself when you do that as well. Follow all the things that you would do on test day. And 3 days before your exam, you're going to complete the review test in this book. It's towards the end of this book. You complete that review test, and then you complete those corrections. Because the way that I wrote this book is I made the review test be stuff that I think you should be reminded of right before your exam, like the sort of concepts that you're most likely to see spread out throughout the review test, so that you're getting that practice and those reminders right before you take the exam, which is why I say 3 days before. And then study your math formulas each night for 5 to 10 minutes. Like I said, if you're cramming, I would do it like every single night, not the every other day thing that I said, because when I said every other day earlier in this video, I meant like if you have more time. If you're cramming, you obviously need to like take advantage of every day. So yeah, at least 5 to 10 minutes each night, if not more than that. And I would recommend flashcards for that. If you have the capacity for more, then complete as many of the quizzes as possible. Now again, and the corresponding corrections, obviously. So again, the way that I wrote this book was that I spread out periodic practice of the most common types of problems that you're going to see on the exam. So that's how I wrote the quizzes and the review tests, because if you guys do, like, let's say you do the probability chapter because you're bad with probability, but that's something that shows up a lot on the exam. If you just do the probability chapter, you're probably going to forget how to do that if you're not consistently studying that by doing review quizzes. So that's something that I included, like one probability problem on each of the review quizzes and on the review test, to make sure that you are studying that periodically so that you don't forget. Now, if you have more time, if you're able to do more or you have more than a week, I would recommend doing the following in this order. Do the diagnostic test and complete those corrections. Complete the 3 reviews at the beginning of this book. Then study the math formula sheets, like keep studying them like more than you already were, obviously, because I already put that in the 3 days. And then it says start completing the quizzes and start completing the chapters for skills that you missed on the diagnostic test. So that's what I would do if you have more time and you're cramming. Now, if you have about a month, this is the what I recommend that you do. You still do the corrections, just like I said at the beginning. With the cramming stuff, you always focus on corrections afterwards, after doing practice problems. But if you have about a month, start by doing the diagnostic tests and completing those corrections. Now, when you watch the diagnostic test video, it'll tell you how to analyze those. But there's a reason why you're doing that first, because the diagnostic test is going to tell you, hey, you need to study, I don't know, functions or something, because you got the functions question wrong. So you need to start with that chapter, etc., like with all the other skills that you might miss. So instead of having to go through every single chapter, if you only have about a month, you're probably not going to get through every single chapter because you have school and whatnot. So you should probably start with your weaknesses so that you can bring those skills up and do better with those. Now, after you do the diagnostic test, I would do the 3 reviews at the beginning of this book. Again, make sure, I'll say this with the 3 review stuff when I do the video, but with the 3 reviews, it's really about like knowing how to use your calculator, making sure that you know how to use your calculator, because a lot of students don't. And if you just don't know how to input stuff into a calculator correctly, like the easy stuff like adding and dividing and all of that when you're doing different order operation stuff, that's something very easy that you'll end up getting the entire question wrong when you could have easily fixed that by just making sure you did the 3 reviews chapter and knew how to use a calculator. So it would really stink if like you get all the complex parts of the problem wrong and then just input it into your calculator incorrectly and I think I said get the complex parts right is what I meant. It would really stink if you get the complex parts right and then you put it all into your calculator and you get that part wrong, where you just input it wrong and get the wrong answer. So then I would analyze your diagnostic test, like I said before, and begin doing the relevant chapters in order. And meanwhile, start studying the math formula sheets periodically. So I would, again, I strongly recommend flashcards for this. Like just kind of put like on one side of the flashcard, what is the quadratic formula? And then on the other side, you'll write the quadratic formulas. That way you can like quiz yourself. And then also try to do at least one of the quizzes per week. So there's no point in doing all the quizzes like in 1 week. The whole point of the quizzes is that you're reviewing stuff periodically. So you want to be doing those quizzes like maybe one or 2 quizzes per week. If you're doing it if it's 1 month before the exam, it's probably like 2 quizzes per week because there are 9 total quizzes throughout the book. So you're going to want to do 2 quizzes per week if you have about a month until your exam. Do the review test after that and complete those corrections about 3 days before your exam. Now, here's a sample schedule of what you could do after you complete the diagnostic and the 3 reviews. So on Monday that week, you could analyze your diagnostic and complete corrections for your diagnostic test. Then on Tuesday, spend 30 minutes working on chapters for the topics you missed on your diagnostic test and spend 5 minutes studying the math formula sheets, that sort of thing. And then Wednesday, complete one or 2 of the quizzes. Again, it depends, like, can you do 2 quizzes? If you have a month, you should do 2 quizzes. But I understand that not everyone has that ability, so at least do 1 of the quizzes per week. And then I give you another chance to do the quizzes on Saturday, but really, I know a lot of you guys are going to be like, I can't do all of this in 1 week. If you can't, do at least one of them, like on the pick between Wednesday and Saturday. Pick between one of those days to do one of the quizzes. If you can't get to 2 each week, at least pick one of those days to do one of the quizzes. But really try to do both if you can. Thursday, spend 30 minutes working on chapters for the topics you missed. Again, like this is just once you do the diagnostic test, you start doing the chapters that the diagnostic test tells you to do. And I'll tell you how to figure that out in the video about the diagnostic exam. And then Friday, you can just chill and take a break. Saturday, do the quiz and spend 5 minutes studying your math formulas, that sort of thing. Sunday, spend 30 minutes working on chapters for topics you missed. Like you see, it's very repetitive. It's like every couple of days you start working on the chapters you missed. You do like quiz or 2 throughout the week. And then you just repeat the process the next week, except obviously you're not going to have another diagnostic test. So there's nothing else to analyze for Monday. But on Monday, you can spend 30 minutes working on chapters for topics you missed, again, in place of the first Monday where you're analyzing your diagnostic test. Then 1 week before your exam, take a time to practice test. You, again, could get free copies of that on the ACT website. Just Google it and complete the corrections. Now, remember, time yourself. Make sure that you're doing everything like test day. And then for 3 days before your exam, complete the review test and complete those corrections. Study your math formulas each night for 5 to 10 minutes. If you have the capacity for more, then there's an extra quiz at the end, quiz 9, and I would complete that in the corresponding corrections. Now, if you have 2 or more months, and this is I recommend that for the best results, I recommend that you prep at least 2 months in advance, but I understand not everyone is at that point. Sometimes things happen and you have to cram or you have 1 month. but this is the ideal scenario where you have 2 or more months to study. So what it would do, again, always doing the corrections, start by doing the diagnostic test and completing those corrections. Then complete the 3 reviews at the beginning of the book, making sure you know how to use your calculator. That's a big part of that. Analyze your diagnostic test and begin the relevant chapters in order that it tells you like your weaknesses are. Like start with those. Because even though you have 2+ months, you might not get to every single chapter. I don't know your schedule, I don't know your life. So let's prioritize what's most important, which is going to be the stuff you missed, and then we can get to the other chapters later if we're able to. Now, 8 weeks before your exam, this is important. 8 weeks before your exam, 2 months before your exam, exactly 2 months before your exam, start doing 1 quiz per week. Do not do all the quizzes too early, because the whole point of the quizzes is that they're like your refreshers. They're your reviews of the most commonly asked skills on these exams, so that you're reviewing that once a week periodically so you don't forget it. So start that 8 weeks before your exam date so that you don't accidentally forget all that stuff because you did it all in the beginning. Like let's say you have 4 months of prep, don't do it all in month 1. Like do the quizzes starting 2 months, 8 weeks before your exam, 1 per week. And if you're aiming for the best score possible, then I would recommend doing all the chapters in order instead of just the topics you missed. So if you be honest with yourself, if you think that you're a student that can do every single chapter, then just start doing them in order. You don't have to worry about like going in the order of the diagnostic. But if you think that there's any chance that you'll run out of time, then start prioritizing the most important chapters and then work on from there in order. Like do all the skills that you missed for the chapters that it tells you in your diagnostic, and then after that you can just start working on the other chapters that have skills that you didn't miss until you're done with the book, or until like you're as done with the book as you can be before your exam. And then for the sample weekly schedule, it's pretty similar to the other stuff. So it's basically like the first time you analyze your diagnostic test, complete the corrections. Then again, you're working like on the chapters you missed, doing the studying of the formulas with the flashcards, hopefully, if you can get those. Wednesday, you would complete a quiz and do the practicing of the formulas. And again, I put that disclaimer because it's so important. Don't start doing this. Like this means when I say like this is your Wednesday, you should start doing this 2 months before the exam. This is not going to be something like if you have 4 months, you're not doing this on that Wednesday if it's 4 months out until your exam. You start doing this Wednesday thing when you have 2 months before your exam. So this would start 2 months before your exam. Maybe instead of putting a quiz there, you can put like study the stuff in the chapters, like do an extra day of spending 30 minutes working on the chapters, or you focus on working on English that day or something like that, another one of the sections. And then this becomes the complete 1 quiz and spend 5 minutes studying the math formulas once we get 2 months out from the exam. And then Thursday, spend time doing the chapters for the topics you missed, study your formulas. Friday, chill and take a break. Again, this is a sample schedule. I'm just giving you a sample. You can like alter it if you want. Saturday, take a time practice test. You can find free copies of practice tests on the official website. They release one each year. So again, take that practice test and do the corrections for it afterwards as well. And one of the things that kind of stinks about the ACT versus the SAT is the ACT only releases 1 free practice test per year on their website. So you're not going to have access to like 8 practice tests like you do with the SAT on their website for free. So what I highly recommend for people that want to do the best that they possibly can is getting the official ACT prep guide, because it contains at least 6, if not more, depending on like which what do you call it, edition that you get. It has at least 6 practice tests that you can work on each weekend. So I would highly recommend getting that book so that you can start doing those practice tests. And if you're just able to get that guide, like no other ones, because there's like multiple different like books that have multiple different practice tests, I would get the official one is the most important one to get. But like you could get, I mean, they're not the best books out there, but you are limited to how many ACT exams are available to you, like official ones in that official guide. So if you want even more than 6 to work with, then you can get stuff like the Princeton Review, the Kaplan books, that sort of thing, and do those practice tests that they have in there. And those would be something that I would recommend maybe doing earlier on if you're doing like more than 2 months of prep, because I would save the official stuff for closer to the exam day, because that's going to be stuff that you're going to be reminded of that's closer to the exam and how it is. The Kaplan and Princeton review stuff, variants, all of that aren't as close to the exam as the official exam is going to be. So I would highly recommend getting that book, to the official ACT prep guide, so that you have access to actual ACT exams, so that you have the closest thing that you possibly can to those exams and practicing with those resources. So Sunday, complete corrections for the practice test you took on Saturday and spend 5 minutes studying the math formula sheets. Pretty self-explanatory. Then for 3 days before the exam, complete the review test and complete those corrections. Study your math formulas each night for 5 to 10 minutes. If you have the capacity for more, then complete quiz 9 and the corresponding corrections. So that is it for these study plans. And next up, we will be talking about the 3 review, or not 3 reviews, sorry, the diagnostic test.